All right, so we got a highlight video breakdown here for you of game 117-118 right here on our ATS YouTube page, part of ATS Radio. I'm Adam Burke. That's Kyle Hunter from HunterSportsPicks.com. And we're going to talk about Baylor and West Virginia here. And this is a number hovering in that key number range. A lot of places sitting 2.5. There are a few threes out there on the board, but you're paying some extra juice there if you want Baylor, or if you want West Virginia, at the +3. Current total on this game, 54.5 as we're recording early Monday afternoon. Very interesting game here. You know, a conference game, Baylor taking a little bit of a trip out to Morgantown. What is your starting point with this handicap, Kyle?
Yeah, I think this game's a little bit too high toward Baylor. I have this game at pick. I think West Virginia was a little bit better last week than most people give them credit for being. And at the same time, Baylor, that was a misleading game last week, like you were mentioning. You're not going to get kickoff returns for touchdowns all the time against everybody. Everybody's not going to be Kansas. So it's not going to be as easy for them. I don't think we really know what Baylor is yet. Do we feel really confident that Baylor's great based on that win? I don't think we should. At the same time, I think West Virginia will be an improved team in year 2 of Neil Brown. I think he's a good coach. I like their defensive coordinator a lot. West Virginia's defensive line is very good. I think they're one of the best defensive lines in the Big 12. If you look at Baylor's offense, I think Baylor will be pretty good at offense, not elite. Have a good quarterback, obviously, in Brewer. I think the jury's out on Baylor, though, and you go to Morgantown. I know that it's not in a typical season, but still, they have a pretty good home field advantage even without that. This is a long trip for Baylor. I can't lay the points here with Baylor. The only way I could take this game on a side perspective would be West Virginia. I also lean to the under here. I think this one's a little bit too high. Baylor last week, 5.25 yards per play against Kansas, which is really not very good. And now they play a really good defense in West Virginia. West Virginia's defense wasn't that bad against Oklahoma State either. So if you just break down this game from last week's final scores, you would think Baylor would win this game easily. But I feel like this is a good example of what we just talked about, and what we talk about a lot here on the show, is that those misleading games are really important to look at. Now, maybe Baylor goes and just wins this game easily. Certainly, it's possible. I don't think, though, if you want to bet Baylor here, you want to do it just because they won by so much against Kansas, or because Oklahoma State covered against West Virginia. You need to have a different reason for that. I will say, like I said, I think West Virginia takes a pretty big step forward in year 2. Baylor is still an unknown to me in year 1 of Aranda. I think he'll do a good job, but what are they going to do in year 1? They lost a lot from that defense last year. I think they'll still be pretty good at defense. Both of these teams don't play overly fast either, which is one of the reasons I like the under. A lot of teams in the Big 12 really do play quickly. These two teams don't. So I see this one being an under look, and I also like West Virginia.
Yeah, I like this one as an underlook too. And last week we did a highlight video with Tennessee and South Carolina, and that game did fly over the total. But if you listened to us, you did get a good number on that total, as that one moved down quite a bit throughout the week. So, we did get some closing line value on that one, just didn't get the right result. So Tennessee had a pick 6, and there were some other things that kind of happened in that game. But in this one, I agree with you. And one of the things that really stood out to me last week is that Jarrett Doege for West Virginia only had 20 completions, but threw for 280 some odd yards. But they tried to force feed the run. They wound up with 42 carries, some of them Doege getting sacked, some of them him running for his life. But they tried to force feed the run quite a bit. And I think that's something that you want to look at here too. You want to look at game state, and you want to sort of look at what teams are doing in terms of their play selection. And West Virginia, they tried to wear Baylor down. And maybe you can say that made sense with Baylor, or with Oklahoma State, With Oklahoma State, they wanted to run the football too, because they didn't have Spencer Sanders. They weren't going to have a whole lot going on in the passing game. So West Virginia wanted to control the football, wanted to keep their defense from getting gassed, and they ran a lot of plays in that game. They just, weren't able to protect the quarterback well enough to put up a good number of points. You look at Baylor, their defense got a lot of work last week, but their offense really didn't, because they lost 2 possessions with those kick return touchdowns. And early on in the season, while you're happy to get those 14 points, you also want your offense to go through the playbook. You want your quarterback to get comfortable going through his progressions and all of that. Baylor lost out on some of that opportunity last week. So I think their offense could be behind to some degree here in this game. So I do like the under along with you in this one.
Yeah, the under is my favorite play in this one. If West Virginia's 3 or higher, I like West Virginia on the side. Looks like it's minus 120 if you want to get plus 3. I don't know what this line will do from a side standpoint. Do you think this one will be at 3 at the close, or where do you think this line will be?
I think it's a tough one. I mean, you said you've got it pick. I've got Baylor minus 1.5 here. I think there's a chance it probably does come down a little bit, at least, stays off of 3. But this is maybe one of those spots, too, where you can kind of make that decision, underdog, plus 2, plus 2.5 range. Do you just go ahead and take the money line instead?
Yeah, and I do like money line. If you could get plus 120, plus 125, somewhere in that range, I think that would be worth it. I think this is a game that does have some variance to it. We don't know these teams really well as far as exactly what they'll be, especially Baylor. They played one game, got all those kick returns. What are they going to be? We don't really know yet. I think West Virginia is a good defense, questionable offense. Their offensive line's an issue. So I like the under better in this one, but I do like West Virginia as well.
Well, of course, we'll see as we get closer to the weekend here. I know it's supposed to cool off in the Great Lakes area. Maybe you get some weather, some wind, some of those types of things. As the calendar flips over to October, weather very much something you want to factor into your handicap. And we'll talk about that a lot here on ATS Radio and also with these ATS YouTube videos.